Hey, Matt Bacon here on the My zero point 0.4 Cents podcast with my dear friend Scotty Tankcrimes of Tankcrimes Records. What's up, Scotty?
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me on the Point Four Cents podcast. Audience, we are dear friends. He's not lying.
Yeah, no, I've known Scotty since I was pretty young. I was actually thinking about this because I was telling my girlfriend I was going to interview you, and I was thinking about how the first time we met, you were still roadieing for municipal waste,
Yep.
and you were literally holding together Dave Whitty's drum kit in front of like 20,000 people. And I wasn't sure because we never met in person before. I wasn't sure if it was like okay for me to run out and help you hold the kit together.
I'm so glad you were there for that because you get to tell that story for me because that was fun.
Yeah, it was super fun.
Mhm.
Um,
I was also
but
shooting a
anyway,
music. I
so
was also shooting a music video at the exact same time I was doing that too. Wall of or Wave of
yes,
Death by Municipal Waste.
so let's get into that. We kind of obviously you and I have a long term relationship, but what's your origin story? How did you first get involved in music and underground music specifically?
Early man pounded rocks together to create rhythms, and that is the essence of where I come from. No, I'm a '90s kid, man, so I was into everything, you know? My first love was hip hop. Then when I started smoking pot, I started digging into my dad's record collection and got, like, well-versed in rock, you know? And then came punk, you know? I was in high school from '91 to '95, so if you look at popular music, like, everything that's still celebrated today came out in between '91 and '95. So those
Yeah.
were like those are like the years I'm absorbing everything musically, you know? And my senior year, so in 1994, I had been to tons of concerts and stuff like that. And I'd even seen Green Day at the hockey arena. But in 1994, I went and saw Rancid at a club. And that was my first real punk show. And I was pretty much sold on punk right then, you
How
know? And St. Andrews Hall's still
how
there. I go there with bands and play still now. It's awesome.
Okay, so it was St. Andrews Hall. So that was still like it was like a club show, but it was still like 1,000 people.
Yeah, I mean, this is pre-Out Come the Wolves, but I mean, they had a video on 120 Minutes or whatever. Um, Salvation was on MTV, like late night or whatever, not in
Yeah.
like main rotation. But yeah, I mean, they're playing, you know, so that was when Rancid was like the size then of like the biggest bands I work with now. 1,000 room
Yeah.
club tours, you know? So that was really cool. That changed a lot, for me as far as, like, where, the direction my ears were going into. And within a couple years, I got off a bus in San Francisco as a teenager, just, like, ready for anything with no real plans. I was doing, you know, like, massive music fan, so when I got to San Francisco, I was just going to everything I could find, hip hop, reggae, ska, punk, hardcore, all that stuff. But I was really still going to you know, I was still really going to bigger clubs. You know, there was a place called the Maritime Hall in San Francisco where I used to see a lot of clubs and I used to volunteer there to usher, but these are still like this is still like similar to that Rancid show I went to back in Detroit. You know, I'm still in a thousand
Yeah.
in a big club, you know, for that. And then a few years after I got into San Francisco, I ended up at a show at a record store, Mission Records, which was really I had been to like a couple like true DIY shows. Like I went to a show in a coffee shop before, and I'd been in a VFW hall before. But this was like a record store you could just like bring a 40 ounce into, and they had shows in the back room, and it was like sketchy and cool and self-policed and cheap, and the stage was about, you know, the stage was like built out of 2x4s. It was maybe a foot off the ground, and that was really the first time I was watching bands going, oh shit, I could do this. Like I didn't, you know, like going to concerts, even punk shows, I very much felt like I was in the audience and a fan. And then once I like really got into the like real DIY that was going on in San Francisco, this is like 2000. I was just hooked because I was like, "Oh shit, like I can do that." Like that guy or gal playing guitar, drums, bass, singing, whatever, they're not like on some big stage. Like that's just somebody I'm gonna drink beer with after the show, or like somebody who's gonna bum me a cigarette. Like it was totally normal, and I was like, that was like a real eye opener for me. That I'd been such a music fan for so long and was completely unaware of this scene where 50 people in a town would start 5 bands and invite people from around the world to come play with them and stuff like that. So that was new. Plus, I'm in San Francisco, so it's like a massive scene. It's not like, like discovering the same underground DIY scene back home in Michigan would have been 40 people. Where now I'm in San Francisco, home of Maximum Rock and Roll, home of Alternative Tentacles, home of Crank Records, 625 Records, 6 Weeks Records, just so much going on, and the eyes of the DIY world really looking at San Francisco and the Bay Area for like what's new, what's cool, what's going on. And I really found my place there. And it was like, for the very first time, I was just first time in my entire life, I was focused on one thing that I wanted to do. And at that point, it wasn't run a record label. It was just, this is something I want to be a part of. I'm absolutely obsessed with it on day one. And immediately it was like, oh shit, what are all these zines? What are all these bands? Give me every flyer that anyone's handing out at any show. I just want to go, 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 go. And so it's like the way my life's been, it's like I've been bad in my life at keeping in touch with people, because I'm always just like go go. And it was like as soon as I found this, I was like so focused. It was like, and it's been like this for the last 25 years. Like the people I surround myself are the people that are doing the exact same thing as me. And that even comes down to when I'm working on a record, like I choose who I want to work with because that's who I'm going to be talking to on the phone for the next 6 months or whatever. But I just became super directional and just absolutely obsessed with what I do now. And I didn't even know this was the end game. I just knew what I wanted to do. And I was, young. A huge thing that can't be replicated today, that's part of my story, is that shit was still cheap. Like, I was living in San Francisco for $400 a month. So, when I started my distro and stuff, when I quit my last job waiting tables, I could still hustle my 7-inch distro to get rent, I needed, like, 10 bucks a day for food and beer and 400 bucks a month to pay rent, No phone bill, no internet bill, no, it was just like, so, I needed like $600 every single month to live. And I could do that hustling punk shit. I mean, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but it was like same thing. Once I'm going to shows, I'm like, oh, what's this over here? Oh shit. Like this guy just brings his own record store to the record store. Or this band has their own record store on tour with them. And it just all like it all just worked. Like I have an entrepreneurial mindset because my dad owned a bar and I worked at my dad's bar growing up. And so I never knew what I wanted to do, but I never thought, who am I going to work for? It was always like, what am I going to run?
Yeah.
It wasn't going to be my dad's bar, but it wasn't going to be working for someone else. And like the last job I quit, I was a cocktail waitress at a super famous bar in the Castro in San Francisco, Harvey's, named after Harvey Milk. And I left that job. It was my very last day working a real job, and I walked all the way home. San Francisco's not that big, but it was probably like a 2.5, 3 mile walk, and it was over some big hills and stuff like that. And I just really was like racking my brain the whole way home, like, how can I make $600 a month without having to go ever fill out an application again? And I just went for it. But like I said, when I just started that, like, I don't know, like if I lived in San Francisco right now and my rent was 2 grand, plus I needed 20, I don't drink anymore, but now you need 20 bucks a day for food. So that's,
Yeah.
I mean, and this is just the problem with capitalism and art, like art thrives when things are cheap because you need the freedom to have the time to create. And now it's like we're not just like have to give half our lives to some job, but then it's like our phones want the rest of the time when we're not asleep. And like to stay
Yeah.
active and creative, you have to find a balance where it's like you have enough money and you have enough time. And like everything in society wants you to be poor and have no time to yourself. Like society wants you to give all your time to it, whether that be just being brain dead on your phone or working for the system.
Yeah. So, how does Tank Crimes, your label, end up starting?
So, super unique story that I'll try to do really quick is that the very first release on Tank Crimes is not on Tank Crimes, and I didn't pay for it. Fast forward past Mission Records, something super cool and unique happened in the Bay Area right around the time that I was getting super involved in the DIY scene. Was that a couple guys bought a warehouse out in Richmond, California, which is cheaper and sketchier than Oakland and San Francisco and Berkeley, but not too far away either. Like the BART train goes right there. And now there was an all ages, they called it an unsafe place for all ages. There was no rules and anyone could book a show. It cost $50 to book a show and they would run sound. You had to run your own door. So I got like this fucking crash course in learning how to run shows, which has been super important for me. But one of my mentors, John the Baker, is one of the guys who was running Burnt Ramen. And he I thought, like, booking punk shows was gonna be super relaxed, and I know a lot of people that do DIY shows, it's, like, super relaxed, and that's some of the reasons why some shows are amazing and some shows are shitty. John the Baker, like, would be like, "If you're not here an hour before doors, I'm canceling the show. If this" there was, like, they weren't like shitty rules. They were just rules of like making sure shit got done. And so I learned some of that stuff really early. Like I was a drummer who was still setting up his kit on stage, but I also knew if I was running the show, I had to be there an hour early or we were all fucked. So there was this guy named Bob Scammon who not really good friends with still to this day, just like a guy I love and admire. He offered my first hardcore band, Deadfall, a 7-inch on his brand new label called Controlled by Plague. And that was to be his thing. And we fucking recorded right there at Burnt Ramen. We did art. Got everything ready together. We submitted it all for our very first 7-inch. And Bob shows up at our house in San Francisco. That's the other thing about San Francisco at the time. Like, our practice space was right in our garage. So, like, not only was my rent $400, that was a practice space for my whole band. You know, I started screen printing shirts out of there. I
Yeah.
was doing all the stuff out of there. It's another way where, like, affordability makes DIY work. So, but Bob shows up at our house with 1,007 inches, all of them, and goes, "Here, guys, here's your 7-inch. I'm going train hopping this summer." He had like a good like seasonal job, which is why he had. And that's the other thing. At the time, this guy paid for our first release, but that it definitely cost less than $1,500 or something like that. Maybe 2 grand at the end of the day to do 1,007 inches, and we had 12 panel fold out color, a cover, excuse me, colored vinyl, all this stuff that like the very first release I did today would probably cost like 6 grand. And it costs like $1,800 or something like that. So he gave them to us. And it's like, we thought we were on a label. We thought we were going to get a review in Maximum Rock and Roll, a review in Heart Attack, ads in those zines. I mean, the scene I was in, that was kind of it. You're on a label because that label puts an ad in Maximum Rock and Roll. That label gets you a review. At like, you know, there's like at that point, there's like 10 places you can still send your record to for reviews. Razor Cake. Um, so we didn't have any of that. We didn't have just we just had 1,000 records in our garage. And so I was the band dad. And so it just came on me like, oh shit, how are we gonna get this record in stores? How are we gonna get this record in distros? How am I gonna get a review in Maximum Rock and Roll, you know? And so it just came on me. Being in the Bay Area, there was so many resources, like, right there. So it's like, all of a sudden, I don't just wanna start a record label, I want to start a record label and I already have the first release at my house. I just don't know what to do with it. So Jeff Robinson from 6 Weeks Records and Capitalist Casualties, he was the first person that I approached for help, and he gave me a list, like a straight up list. I mean, it might have been copy and pasted right from his email he already had at the time, because I mean, 6 Weeks was super successful at this time and like one of the key players in DIY. And it was, he goes, these are people that may want to review your record. And then what was more important at the time, may want to trade records with you. And it was a list of like 50 people worldwide, Japanese addresses, European addresses, South American addresses, and all over the United States. And I just fucking dug in and I wrote all these people. Another way being in San Francisco helped us out. Then we got the review in Maximum Rock and Roll and it went really, really well. And anybody that was around in 2002 knows one good review in Maximum Rock and Roll, you could sell 1,000 records. Like that was it. And, you know, like that would, if you knew how to distribute them. But we moved that first 1,000 records in under a year, even had to save some for a tour we were doing because I was selling them so fast. But I was trading those like 6 at a time. Like I seriously traded 6 at a time to like
Yeah.
100 distros. And then so now my distro's growing. And this is when like the Scotty Everything store happened. So to sustain and grow on that, I start pushing a shopping cart to shows full of records. And I also, and you know, this key point is that I bought a 1-inch button maker at the time. And that 1-inch button maker did so much for me because there was a couple things. First of all, I'm selling DIY records. Not everybody has heard of all these 7 inches, but I've got 100 buttons out on my distro table. That's like Misfits, Dead Kennedys, fucking Beer, you know, like, and not just like the bigger acts, but it was like one of the things I was making like more obscure hardcore band stuff like Urban Waste, Clit Boys, stuff like that. So it was like you could get the attention of anyone from like, this is my first show to someone who's like a lifer already that I'm just meeting, you know? And so that brings people over to the table. And then what I found is that, you know, I was good at sales. Like, again, I only need someone to spend
Yeah.
$3 at the time to buy a 7 inch, but I could just get people over to the distro table and just start fucking hanging out. You know, I'm sitting over there drinking beer, smoking weed, like just hanging out. People come over to the table, start looking at buttons. We start talking about music. And then it's like, whoa, maybe you should check out these records, stuff like that. And it just, and that's kind of still how I sell records today, but I'm not standing at a merch table in the back of a venue. I'm talking into my phone to whoever will listen, but it's kind of the same idea that I learned then. Like, if I'm
Yeah.
nice and
And this is,
positive,
I
it
think,
brings people over and they want to support and they want to put their trust in me to tell them what to buy. And now it's way different because I have to ask somebody to spend $25, where I used to just ask that, you know, for $5 at my old table distro, you could get 2 buttons and a 7 inch. You know, that's so, but I'm still doing the same thing. So Controlled by Plague then becomes Tankcrimes, and I still consider that my very first release because not only did I do all the promotion, marketing, distribution, but I also played drums on that record. So that becomes the first
yeah.
release, and then I decide I need to make it my own. We actually do 4 releases under the Controlled by Plague name. Like at first, I think I like owe it to Bob to like honor what he's done for us or whatever. But I get a couple releases
Yeah.
in and it's like, okay, like how long do you play? How long do I need to like pay tribute to the guy who gave us $1,000 5 years ago or whatever, you know? Because it starts very slowly. I mean, I'm on a release 150 right now, but it was like year one release, year two, a second release, like year three, four, and five.
Yeah. And so to kind of skip ahead, what allowed Tank Crimes to level up from like, and you and I have talked about this, like you were kind of, a DIY label who like put out a record and then took the profit and then put that into the next record and then put out a record and took the profit and put that into the next record. And that was like the
Yes.
system for a long time. And so, like, what took you from that, which is a great system for like DIY, like if you just want to do it, that's awesome. But what took you from that place to a place where it's like, oh, now I have a salary and I can pay Matt to do ads
Well, I
and stuff like
never
that?
Tankcrimes never really made any money until 2020. COVID was huge for all record labels.
Yeah.
All my peers, we all agree.
Yeah.
And I just was really thoughtful about how to keep that keep that going as the world reopened or whatever. The To your point about using the money from one record sale to the next, I had to learn that in kind of a hard way because then once I started getting more popular bands, like once Ghoul joins Tank Crimes, now I have like a legit popular band that was already popular before I stepped on the scene,
Yeah.
right? With them. And so those records are selling really fast. And the lesson I learned then was I took that money to put out other bands, but now I can't repress the Ghoul stuff, and it's hurting the catalog, and it's making it harder for me to get because
Yeah.
it's really hard to get good distribution as a DIY label because of what you just said, because you're not keeping your popular titles in print. And a larger distributor that doesn't have their necessarily ear to the ground with like what bands are like killing it on house show tours and selling $1,003 7 inches, it's like you need to make sure that you're representing your most popular titles and keeping them in print consistently so a distributor has something to sell and something to mark their part of the marketing job to sell it to stores and stuff. So I kind of learned that by
Yeah.
fucking up, which is how I've learned so much doing this. It was like, oh God, I have 500 unsold records by a band that no one really cares about outside the Bay Area. And I have 3 titles out of print that are popular internationally. So you just kind of have to like, every time it's like, buckle down, figure it out, do the next thing. And then, so I don't know specifically when I figured it out how to be my job, but all the sales we did over 2020 gave me the capital to like finally have a little bit of breathing room to then figure it out and be like, okay, where am I going to go with the catalog from here? And it also rearranged in my brain, like just like I'm a absolute music freak, huge fan, you know, and a lot of fucking bands that I've put out records for, like I offered them the record deal at the first time I saw them play because I'm like watching, I'm like, this band's fucking awesome,
Yeah.
oh my god, and then like going right up to them after the show and being like, we got to do a record together, like, and that
Yeah.
enthusiasm and being a music fanatic is a huge part of the criteria, I think, to do what I do. But once there was actually money to make decisions with, I had to dial back as a fan and treat and realize I can be a fan of bands without working with them at all. Like that was like some, you know,
Yeah.
like I don't need to collect releases the way I collect records, right? Like I don't have to put out every record. I can just buy the records I like and go to, I don't have to put on every show. I can go to the shows I want to go to and see bands. So it's kind of like little tiny things and like working on such a shoestring budget for so long. I mean, 2020, I've already been a label for 15 years. And I haven't worked a real job in 10 or 12, but I never stopped working, and even still continued to work on the road after COVID when everything opened back up. I still went back to work for another year after that before I fully, but then I also
Yeah.
moved out of the Bay Area because it was like, okay, how am I going to do this? I need to cut my expenses. And then it was like how we started this. It went back to like, well, things were cheap when I started, and that was fueled the success, right? So, how do I make things cheap again? And I moved 2 hours out of the Bay Area up here into the
Yeah.
foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains. And I cut my personal living expenses in more than half. My living expenses are like
Yeah, I believe that.
65% less than they were in Oakland. Yeah, you have to
Well,
make
yeah, because
sacrifices of what you wanna do. Like, I can do this halfway and live in a
yeah,
cool city, but, as you get older, I just wasn't doing all the cool city stuff that I used to do every single waking moment for so many years, It just so it was like, well, what am I really paying for? Well, great food, convenience, great neighbors, all the stuff that came along that I love with the Bay Area. Ricky Henderson
Ricky
being my
Henderson.
landlord was always a cool flex, and when he was out mowing the lawn and I would go give him a fist bump, that was really cool. Watchers of My 4 Cents podcast can look that one up if you want, but it's true. So that was it. You gotta go like everything fucking costs money, dude. It's really hard. So I've been very aware of what costs are and what I'm gonna need. And now, now I generally know what a record campaign is gonna cost, whether it's gonna be somebody at the top of the roster or somebody at the bottom of the roster. I know that I need 5 to 25 grand to pull it off, and you gotta just, you know but, like, stuff like right now, I'm running a fucking last minute super cheap price slasher sale at my website because sales kinda slump in the summer, and we just had a huge release in June that hit a bunch of Billboard charts, so I took 3 weeks off, and now it's like, I gotta get back to work, man, like, there's bills to pay and new records to come out, so you can't really stop ever. That's music, that's art, and that's capitalism, and the cross between them all.
So let's talk about this because I wanted to kind of talk about the backstory a little more than we might normally, because I think it's really cool and I think documents a very particular lifestyle that people still do have, right? And that it still can emerge from that, right? Like you're not like some sort of, it's not like you were in a famous band or whatever. You just like community built
Yeah, no
and
one knows my band. No
grew it,
one now knows
you
my
know?
bands. Like, my bands did well while we were playing, but, like, that
Yeah.
some labels are fueled by the label owner has a successful band that can then fuel everything else. That was not the case with me, but playing in bands and touring, um, definitely was like part of the ropes of learning. And
Yeah.
my
And then
experience with DIY touring, not pro club touring, still helps me relate to baby bands on the label, and be able to give them advice on that for sure.
okay, so talking about relating to baby bands on the label. When you're a DIY label and you don't have the resources of a major label subsidiary, who at this point you're competing
It
for
is
bands
crazy that
with,
I'm
which is
competing for
crazy,
bands with
right?
Sony.
Um,
Like we're talking to some of the same people.
yeah, yeah. And so like what do you do as a DIY label to help develop these artists, especially when they're coming from such a DIY place where like social media like isn't even something they want to address, or just the even, even on a DIY label like Tankcrimes, like, you really kinda need a level of professionalism for it to be worth your time, because otherwise you're just suffering. How are you developing artists on a DIY budget on both the label and on their end?
Well, the original rule of that is you guys need to play shows, like, so that's all I expect from the band,
Yeah.
because trying to push an artist into out of their comfort zone can really, like, backfire on you, and it's like, for better or for worse, the way we market bands now is on our phones, and a lot of artists are not comfortable with that. They know, like, their creative expression is music, right? Not marketing. I mean, this is as old as time, right? Like, the artist needs the company man to step in
Yeah.
and help with that stuff. So, when you're dealing with DIY, and just today, everyone's, like, promoting on their phones, and, punk and rock in general was probably 5 to 10 years behind, hip hop and electronic music in just speaking into our phone using our phone as a megaphone to talk to everyone and get them out. But I, I kind of like,
Yeah.
I've tried pushing bands into becoming like a social media artist. Like, this is how you can grab attention. Look at these, there's all these proven theories, like what, listen to someone like Matt Bacon or Jesse Cannon. Like, they'll give you, even and like, I'll
and we're like guys from that
Yeah,
world,
yeah, exactly. It's
you
like these guys
know,
are from that
world,
world,
you
and,
know.
Jesse will do a cool, YouTube video where he'll show you what somebody from a different genre has done, and then if you're thoughtful about it, and this is, I think, his intention, it is like, "Look, you can do this too." Like, maybe every little step that this artist did doesn't apply to you, but you have to look at that and then find which parts of another artist's success you can apply to what you're doing. And I think a lot of artists don't realize to
Yeah,
look outside.
yeah,
Like, a lot of artists want to look like, you're a crust punk band. You want to know what the other crust punk bands are doing. Yeah, they're not doing much. You're a death metal band. You want to know what the other death metal bands are doing. Well, are you looking at Cannibal Corpse or are you looking at fucking, Mortuous? Like, there's such a wide range or whatever.
I also think one of the key things to understand when studying other artists is not saying is to not look at the top artist in that genre, right? Like, I think very frequently people are like, "Oh, well, Cannibal Corpse don't do this, I don't have to do it." And it's like, "Yeah, but they're also, like, 30 years of
And the
history
only and the only
and
death metal
invented
band
it."
my dad's heard of that's not
You
on
know?
Tankcrimes, right? Like, you can't. It's like, like the law of,
Yeah,
like, when you're making,
yeah.
like, an average, it's like, remove the top 1% and the bottom 1%, and now you can kinda, like, work with those numbers or whatever. Not every hardcore band's gonna be Turnstile,
Yeah,
but if you
and
go to
then you
the
can start
next
to
biggest
go
hardcore band, you can maybe start there even,
yeah, well, because like, what I always do is I always tell people, like, "What is the band you dream of opening for?" Turnstile, okay. Who opens for
Rappers.
Turnstile? Okay,
Yeah.
probably a bunch of bands around, like,
Honestly,
1,000 t
the Turnstile tour is really
but
thoughtful,
also,
their
like, a
tour
lot of,
coming
like
up with the support they chose.
yeah, but they'll have someone like a Kublai Khan or something. I don't know if Kublai Khan's opening for them, but just as a hardcore band just like a
Yeah.
tier below, who's still fucking big, and then it's like, who opens for them? Okay, Pain of Salvation. Now we're looking at a band who you could, like, as a artist, like,
If
who
you're new, you
isn't
can look at the
who's
3rd
just
band
starting
and
out,
be like, "We wanna
that's a
be
band
there."
who's not that much
Yeah.
bigger than you. Yeah, and, like, that's something that, like, the first time I saw Pain of Salvation was 3, 4 years ago. There was 200 people in the room, you know? But or Pain of Truth. Pain of Salvation is
So I
the
look
prog
at what
metal band,
other
never
people are
mind.
I look at what other bands are doing.
But
I mean,
whatever.
I just bringing up Turnstile, I mean, because I keep calling you about it. I've been studying their, this record release campaign, for Never Enough has been awesome. Like, I love it. And it's like, I don't have the budget to do some of the stuff that they've done, but I'm already peeling back like, "Oh, but I could do this with this budget because that was fucking sick." So I look at everyone. I have I have 2 different marketing books that are just about what the Grateful Dead did. So it's like you gotta pull from everywhere, and tons of
Yeah.
stuff about running the label, I learned from hip hop. Like, so much because hip hop entrepreneurs absolutely changed what independent labels do and can do. So, like, I'm not, like, looking at what Relapse did, which I'm lying, I do look at what Relapse did, but not on a day to day. I'm like, what did No Limit do? What did like, what did Def Jam do? Those are the kind of things I'm studying, to see how I can apply that to what we do at Tank Crimes, And but fast forward reverse, it's like I said, it's hard to get artists to market. That's where my job comes from. It's where your job comes from, right? Like I said, like, their music is their creative expression. My creative expression is marketing their music. If that sounds gross, I don't know, but it's like I I have to be creative. Whether that's being creative with the budget, being creative with how I apply an idea from a pop star to a crust punk band, anything like that. Um, but obviously, the main way to market your music right now is on social media, whether that be Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube. And I've only got one artist on the roster who's totally dedicated to Instagram and YouTube. And I don't have any artists on TikTok. I don't have one band with a TikTok
And it's
account, but I have one band that we get checks from TikTok every single month. But I haven't crossed over to it because I'm doing all this myself. So for me, and you and I have been through this, Spreading, if it's just me doing all the marketing, it was too much for me to try to spread it across 5 apps. So I've doubled down on Instagram, and it's where most of my fans are. And a lot of this, I know I'm missing out on some stuff on TikTok, but it seems to me that everybody sees everything, kind of. And for me, I'm not trying to, and the way social media is moving, where it's like it, the algorithm wants to create an opportunity for anyone to blow up at any time. I'm not really looking for that. Like, I really want to be sending my message directly to fans of the label or fans of the band. I'm not so much trying to grab randos' ears who are potential fans. I'd rather talk directly to my fans, and then hopefully they tell their random friend to check it out. Like, it moves like that or whatever.
Well, and there's two things here that I want to address. Because the first thing is, quite frankly, a lot of your labels or a lot of your artists, there's a relatively high barrier of
What do you
entry to
mean?
get into. Like, like nobody's like hearing a Ramones record and then their next punk
Yeah,
record
no,
is Dystopia.
exactly. Like, everything I do, you have to stretch the surface.
Like the
And
people who are
even
into it are
as
like
Dystopia
into
has
it.
become like a starter kit band for younger punks, which is so fucking cool, it's still you still have to like Dead Kennedys and Misfits first before you even get close. Like, you're still listening to Rancid for a year or more before you start moving towards Dystopia, at least. And that was also my case.
Yeah.
Dystopia was too heavy for
Yeah.
my
No,
ear
that's everyone's
when
journey.
I first heard them in 1999. I respected what they did, knew it was cool, saw the patches. This is too heavy for me. My ear adjusted to that as I got into more music or whatever. So I am that fan. I lived the life of that fan
Yeah.
who's going from Warp Tour to house show, which is a very real cycle. And then when you're a kid, you get to the house show and you have to pretend you weren't at the Warp Tour. And then if you make it till you're 30, you can be like, yeah, I did all that shit.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is
That,
where
that's
this
part
is
of
what I'm
being an
transitioning
underground
into
music
now.
fan, is getting into a band and then like deserting that band for other cooler, more underground bands. And then if you stick around long enough, like, there was a bunch of like kind of like major like Epitaph type punk bands that I loved in my teens that I completely rejected in my 20s. And then when I like got like mature enough to be like, all these bands are good. They just are from different genres with different choices. What was cool was a lot of those bands had put out really good albums while I was in my 20s that I got to revisit in my 30s and be like, oh, sick. Bouncing Souls kept
Yeah.
making good music. Rancid kept making good music. But I understand that pipeline of having to deny you
Yeah.
liked, you
So,
know, like I said, I saw Green Day in a hockey arena a year before I saw Rancid play in a club.
yeah.
So,
So, okay, but to circle back on the marketing side,
yes.
because you're talking about the power of word of mouth, right? And like Jesse and
I
I
love that
ran
poll.
a
I reached out to
poll. You
Jesse
saw the
direct to say
results.
thank you. That was so cool.
Yeah. So last year, so for those who don't know, last year Jesse and I ran a poll asking people how they consume music, right? And it went pretty in depth. It was like 30 questions. It was kind of crazy, actually, how many people replied to all the questions. Well, the big takeaway was the most common way people discover new music is still word of mouth, right? And now my question is, you know, you're saying word of mouth is, like you directly said, word of mouth is one of your primary marketing vectors, you know, and how do you build word of mouth around a DIY artist?
Word of mouth for me used to be, oh, some friends are drinking beer at someone's house and they're playing records. And somebody goes, oh, dude, have you seen this band's record? I'll put it on. And that's the word of mouth. You're literally putting the record on. Like, we used to host bands. I mean, I've had countless bands crash on my floor. But I used to get I used to be able to make $100
Sure.
off the fucking band. Like, it wasn't predatory at all. We would just go back to my house and start partying after the show, and they'd be like, "Oh shit, what is this?" And I'd be like, "Oh, it's the new Widespread Bloodshed 7-inch. Oh fuck, I gotta get one." Then I just sold 6 records, to the 5 people in the band and their merch gal. Like, everyone bought a 7-inch.
Yeah.
And then it's like, now we're down in the basement digging through the distro, and everyone's fucking shopping and stuff like that. So that was my word of mouth. Now it's like, and this is something that I took directly from that poll, was something I wasn't focusing on was YouTube, which is somewhere where I really need to be and have moved bands towards there in the last year. And it's not just because of the people pressing click on it, but word of mouth now is in shares. Like, now word of mouth is you just fucking text your homie
Yeah.
a video from YouTube, or you click fucking shit, you DM it right to them, right in your fucking phone, and they're, staring at their phone right at that exact same time and click fucking play immediately. I just had a friend send me a link just like yesterday, like, check out this band. Boom, I hit play. Okay, cool. Yeah, this band's cool. Thanks for showing me. Now I know this band. So it's like, it's easier, but you're competing with more people because everyone's looking at the same screen and everyone's trying to get that piece of attention. And we're at competition with the apps themselves, like at each other. I'm in competition with my own bands for attention, if that makes any sense at all, because it really doesn't. But it's like we're all fighting the same, we're all trying to get on the same screen in front of the same eyeballs.
So how do you leverage yourself so that you're more likely to get on that screen? How are you leveraging yourself for
The way I
shareability?
market Tankcrimes now is like kind of the same. It kind of went back to like what I started about. I was like, man, pre-internet, I used to sell a lot of records by being at the show, hanging out, being friendly, bumming smokes, chit-chatting with people, talking about music, hyping up music, doing sales in a not pushy or like in a way that's appropriate and stuff like that. And I'm getting along with people. I'm making fans by becoming friends with them, and then I'm pushing my music onto them. I just changed that into what I do with my phone. Now it's like I just turn on my phone and I talk about my music, the music that I'm publishing, and I'm trying to create that same feel, like you're just hanging out with me and I'm telling you about music.
Well, yeah, I 100%. And I think you do these videos where you're literally standing in your yard talking into the camera about records you like. What was the impetus for that?
Well, that's where it came from. It's like, so we talked about like I'm studying constantly how do people market? And it doesn't even have to be music. I'm like, how are people marketing this fucking doodad? Like whatever. How do people sell stuff? And I read books, I read blogs, I watch videos on all this stuff. And it was like, one of the key ways if you're a brand and you have a huge ad budget, it's just like pay somebody famous to talk about your shit. And it's like, all right, well, I'm never gonna do that, but maybe so I'll just be the guy. So I'm not a famous guy, but I don't have to get paid either. And I'll just start talking to people the way a brand might pay an influencer. It's like, how would I approach this if Tank Crimes called me and said, "Hey, will you talk about our records on your fucking Instagram for 5 minutes?" So I just take it directly from there. And, it takes a minute. You know this because you talk to your phone 5 times a day, but it takes a minute to get comfortable and to make it just feel normal. And I'm at the point where, I just turn on my phone and talk for 3 minutes and turn it off and publish it. I
Yeah.
don't even watch it again before it publishes. And part of that is another thing that's super difficult for artists to not fucking overthink that and do 5 fucking takes and revise everything and, "Oh, I should have said it this way," or whatever. Um, a lot of that stuff makes it inorganic and people can see that, like you've certainly seen bands or even, some not a lot of label bosses talk to their fans the way I do, but sometimes, I applaud people for trying because it does take courage is something that people never talk about to start just like broadcasting out into your phone. But, some people look like a fucking hostage video, and it's like, you have to just be yourself. I mean, you talk about authenticity all the time. There's really no more way to be authentic than to just hit fucking record and talk. It is what it is, no bullshit. My artist's
Right?
creative expression is in music. My creative expression may be marketing their music. How can I be crafty with this? How can I get people's attention? How can I do it authentically, genuinely? How do I connect with people? How can I connect with people in a way that they want to tell other people about what I'm doing? And that's just like every single day. You just get back on the horse and try to do that again. And sometimes some days are you see massive successes and some days, not so much. And you just like keep at it, like anything else. So it's like, this is my job, and, the biggest
Yeah.
part of my job is marketing, so, like, if I try something and it doesn't work, I just don't do it again, or maybe I try it in a different way or adjust a little bit like this.
Yeah. And that kind of ties into the last thing I wanted to ask you, which is really like, what are the big mistakes you're seeing artists missing out on when promoting their music? What are the easy wins they could be having that they're not?
They burn themselves out, like, they'll push out, like, 5 things in a week, be like, "Oh, we're fucking killing it," and then they disappear for a month, and it's like, why I'd rather have you do like 2 things a week than 6 things in or, over a course of a month or 6 weeks, and it's like, that's that's how people get burned out, and it is exhausting. Like, I take breaks all the time, and I even have I have a fucking I've told you about I have this thing called a brick that I tap my phone on, and it shuts off all social media, and I do that every single day. Like, in the morning, I get on social media,
Yeah.
that's my job, and I gotta, like, do a post and do something like that. Sometimes if I'm doing videos, I do it in the evenings instead of the morning. But either way, as soon as I'm done, I stick around for 1 hour to reply to comments and stuff like that, which is that's a really smart thing to do and you really got to do. But after that first hour, I brick out my phone and all social media is shut down on my phone for the
Yeah.
rest of the day. And then I won't get distracted with it throughout the day. And I think that helps me not get burnt out because if you're especially if you're someone who does push notifications and stuff like that, you might be trying to do something else and then one comment has got you back in your phone, like literally like where did the last 2 hours go? Like I got the email and now I've been on fucking threads for an hour. Like how did
Yeah.
that
And
happen? It's just because my brain is like, "Oh, I checked an email. Let me click on that fucking Instagram icon." My brain loves that. Oh, now my brain is fucking goo for an hour. So that's I think a lot of bands get burnout just on that. Yeah, don't have that on. It's bad for your health.
yeah,
But
turning off the push notifications
so
is a big one.
burnout, I see a lot. And I think I'm not someone who can do scheduled posts. My brain doesn't work that way. Like I've tried it, I just can't do it. I have to just do it on the fly and then stick around for an hour and then disappear or whatever. And then, I unbrick my phone at the end of the night. I get back on my phone from like 9 till 10 at night. Like, my wife and I'll watch a movie after dinner and then I'll unbrick my phone and check it for 30 minutes to an hour before turning it off an hour before bed. But another thing that this isn't somewhere where I see bands making a mistake, but I think this is like the ultimate pro tip and it's good for like the vibes on your social media, but also for your own mental health. Delete comments. I delete if someone leaves a comment, like I'm not even talking about like a full-on hater. If someone leaves a comment, even a fan, and I find that comment mildly annoying, it's got to go. Because I'm gonna come back and look at it later and be annoyed. And then if someone replies to it, I'm gonna come back and be annoyed. And so, like, just get that out. Like, I'm fucking looking at art all the fucking time. I follow tons of illustrators, tons of young illustrators, professional illustrators, spray paint artists, all the stuff. And it's like, you see somebody with like 1,000 followers and they're leaving comments from randos up that say stuff like, this sucks. And it's like, fuck that person. Like, this is your, and then the other thing about these people is they'll come back and be like, "Oh, you deleted my comment?" And it's like, "Yeah, and this is another reason why, because you returned to see if anything happened from it. Like, that's embarrassing to me that you came back to see what was up." But it's just gone because I promise you, once you delete it, you stop thinking about it. It's just fucking gone. You're never gonna you don't even remember it. And so that's good for your mental health. And then also with tank crimes, like tank crimes is political, not just the label, but my artists, okay? We are not Democrats. We are fucking on the left, like far. We fucking hate ICE. We fucking hate Trump. We never back the Democrats, even though some of their ideals align a little bit more than us. But that argument's out the window. We're not fucking Hillary Clinton fans, okay? But fuck Trump, fuck all this shit, fuck xenophobia, fuck all this shit. So when we stand on that, hello, online, you get a lot of shit. Those people gotta fucking go too, okay? And it's not, first of all, my page is not up for debate, certainly not with a fucking racist. But also, something that happens is these people find each other in the comments, okay? So if you leave a comment up, even if you're like, oh, look at this clown, he hates everyone that's not white. What an idiot. Well, guess what? Some other asshole who also like somehow is adjacent to what you do, so is in back in your comments, is like, oh, see, it's cool to be racist because this fucking rando's also racist like me, so it's cool. And like, I don't like those people to find each other. And another thing, I don't like people fighting in my comments either. Like some people are like, "Oh, thanks for the comment, hater. It helps the algorithm." I don't care at all about that shit, dude. Get that shit out. I need my mental bandwidth to be focused on music, not a fucking moron or somebody who thinks they know it all. And it's just like some fucking coward with a private account too. So like, get rid of that shit. So, I'll reel it all back. Don't get burnt out. If you're only capable of 5 posts a month, don't do them all in 5 days. Do one a week and make them meaningful and stick around and reply to the comments and talk to your fucking fans. And 2, delete comments, even if they're a little bit annoying and certainly if they're a hater. It's not helping your algorithm. It's not doing anything cool. It's just stressing you the fuck out and is making you less likely to make another post because you don't want to deal with that. And you don't have to. And I promise that as soon as that shit's deleted, it's fucking just gone out of your mind. It's fucking gone. So one other thing I tried to do too, I want to say is I've tried to take over artists' accounts. Okay. Like, oh, you guys don't want to do it? Cool. I'll do it for you. And that seems like a good idea at first. And I know you've dealt with this too. It seems like a good idea, but I have a very unique voice that's my own. And it does not represent my bands at all. And like the thing is, it's like, and we said, if like the music is your creative expression and someone else is the voice of that, it's like it can work for a minute and it's like, oh, I'm killing it on your guys' Instagram page. But then the guys in the band are looking at it like, huh, but this doesn't really, then they start like micromanaging the things. And it's like, well, I'm either going to do it all Scotty or I'm not going to do it, but then you have to do it. So what I found out then, it's like, all right, well, I just need to get the fans of all the bands to follow the label. Like that's a big thing because then I can just still speak from them. But speaking for artists from their own accounts, I did not find to be successful. I found it messes with the band's heads, and it also is misrepresenting the bands because I'm speaking for them in my voice, which I can totally do on my own page and have their blessings to do. But once it moves to their page, it gets dodgy, and that's, some some bands are too critical of the output that comes out. It might be what slows them down with a lot of the stuff, but it doesn't change that that's the way they feel, and no artist wants to feel like they're being represented in a way that's not them. So taking over an artist's account was not the answer.
There's definitely ways to hire social media managers who can do your voice, right? Especially if you have a very clear brand.
Cool's easy because they're fake. Yeah, we love it. It's just like,
Yeah, it's also because it's like it's funny. Like you get to be funny and you
but it
get to
doesn't always
pretend
work
you're
for every
writing as a
band.
monster,
Even though you
and
just tell
like
bands like
it's
talk like a
great. You
wrestler.
know what I
That's what I
mean?
always tell bands. Talk like a
Um,
wrestler.
but I think
But
that
even
like
that's like hard for some bands. They don't
yeah,
want to
but well, 'cause
say we're coming to fucking just devastate your
yeah,
town. They want to be like, please come
yeah,
to our show. Me and you on that on one sentence of fucking ad copy. Me and you will go back 5 times
oh yeah,
because that's even harder because it's me and you and you're trying to do what sells, and
yeah.
I'm trying to go through the mind of my artist to see what they would want without bringing them into the conversation because that's going to add 5 days to it, right? Like we're doing stuff like that. It's hard. It's hard. You got to find a balance, you know? And even like I said, even though all my artists, we're all personal friends. And so they obviously like my personality and they like the way that I market the label, but that just doesn't work. It just doesn't work for a crust punk and death metal can't just be fucking bubbly stoned Scotty trying to sell you a record. It's not it's a different vibe, you know? And some people will be like, "Scotty, how are you so posy and fucking, like upbeat about all this stuff?" I'm like, "Cause the world is horrible. And have you listened to the music that I put out? It's soul crushingly depressing, a lot of it." So it's like I'm the yin to that yang, you know?
It's interesting
Yeah.
because artist voices and label voices just kind of also fundamentally have to be different.
Well, some stuff like that, it's like now what's nice is that now that you can collab with your artists on social media, like, bands have been asking me to take the lead on announcements, like a tour announcement or an album announcement. Usually the first post now is coming from Tank Crimes, and because the artist kinda likes the way that I can there's just, like, this different way where I'm like, today I'm thrilled to announce that we're going on tour with this person. So that is a way when it comes into just the full on selling part of the marketing, sometimes the bands have deferred back to the label. Like, will you take the lead on this one, Scotty? Because we actually like the label voice behind this one because you're literally telling people to push a button and spend money. Where we want to be the voice when it's like not spend money. Like that's where the art meets commerce
Yeah.
falls back on me, which is my comfort zone even, you know? So
Cool. Just to kind of put a pin and end this, where do you think the future of underground DIY music lies? What does it look like in 5, 10 years?
what I know for sure is that the future of DIY, whether it's in 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years, is about groups of creative people getting together and just making noise and then being proud of that noise and wanting to share it with other people and then having to develop friendships and relationships in the music community to share that and to people are always going to make art and DIY is like such a really good comfort zone for a lot of people who don't want to go a different route. So the future of DIY um it lies in kids that are fucking learning how to play guitar today, you know? And it's like some kid who wants to get a fucking bass because they went and saw a fucking Turnstile or fucking Cannibal Corpse, they're gonna put out a 7-inch on a DIY label, you know? And the only thing that makes me nervous, about DIY labels is the money. I just really we try our best to keep stuff affordable. That's a huge part of DIY, and as I've had to raise my prices over the years, it's crazy. Like, LPs were at $10 for 100 years. They went from 15 to 20 to 25 in 5 years. None of my fans flinched. Do you know how hard it was for me to go from 20 to 25? When we went from 15 to
Yeah.
20, I'm like, this is it, man. Yeah, I'm like, how am I gonna go to 25? Now I gotta sell $25 t-shirts and $25
I
LPs.
remember that phone
So
call.
that's way fucking different than selling fucking $3 7 inches and $1 buttons where I came from. But luckily I didn't see anyone flinch. Like the whole market moved at the same time. It just still sucks. Like I don't want to do that. So I hope affordability stays. But really, DIY will always be there because people are always going to want to create. Like creative people have something inside them that pushes them towards the paintbrush or the instrument or the microphone or any of those things. And so there's always going to be varying degrees of success from DIY, but it's always going to be there. And that's where, like, in the biggest artist in 10 years is like figuring out how to get a local show right now. You like figuring out how to make some friends at a show, figuring, which, by the way, now that we're here, DIY advice: to
Yeah.
get shows, you got to go to shows. It's
I mean,
showing up is all about DIY, everyone. If you fucking hang out at shows, do you know how many bands I put on shows because their kids would come fucking buy buttons off me and hang out at the merch thing? And then they're like, oh, yeah, also I play in a band. Oh, that's, you didn't mention that. Oh, no shit, you're in a band? Oh, give me a fucking flyer. Like, nepotism is real because people want to help their friends. Like, that, I have no shame in being like, only my friends are on my label. I only put my friends on my shows. It's because it takes a lot of work and there's not a huge reward. So, a lot of the reward is like community. It's the success of your friends. It's being part of something. It's being on a team. It's collaborating. That's all sick. And so that's why DIY is going to be just fine, because no matter how much the system can crush everyone's souls or try, or how addicted we can become to our screens, or how isolated we can become from each other, there's it's in our souls to want to create art. And so it's just going to keep happening. And so I'm not worried about DIY. And I also know from 25 years of experience that we will be doing stuff differently in 10 years. And you just got to roll with the punches because everything changes about every 5 years. And I don't know if maybe tech is trying to freeze us somewhere. It seems they are, but you never know. You got to be ready for change. Adaptability is survival for sure.
cool. Thank you so much.